In this fourth lecture on the rabbinic literature of the medieval period, I'd like to hone in on whom I consider to be the two greatest rabbis of the medieval period, Rashi and Rambam. Holt's chapters 3 and 4 introduces both of them. So what I'd like to do is say just a few introductory words about each of them, but then I'd like to focus in on something that the chapter does not deal with, and that is a summary of views of the Messiah of each of these figures. First, Rashi. Rabbi Solomon ben Isaac, or Rabbi Shlomo Yitzchaki, commonly known by the acronym as Rashi, is one of the most distinguished Jewish scholars and thinkers of all time. His two most notable works are his commentary on the Bible and his commentary on the Talmud. In general, Rashi employs a pashat, or simple, or plain sense method of exegesis in his commentaries. He intermingles this with his depth of knowledge of classical rabbinic sources such as Midrash. He incorporates into the Peshat the treasury of earlier rabbinic writings, all in a clear, efficient, and interesting style. Rashi brings poignant clarity even to exceedingly complex Talmudic discussions. Rashi's influence is evident in every Jewish Bible with commentary, in every version and edition of the Talmud for the last 900 years. He is without a doubt one of a handful of the greatest Jewish thinkers, and his impact and influences on both the Jewish and Christian worlds continues to this day. Here's a little bit on Rashi on the Messiah. Rashi knew Christian views of the Messiah. Although he did not quote Christian positions in his commentaries, he seemed to be reacting to them. And he often said that he was communicating the, quote, plain sense and formulating, quote, an answer to the Christians. He takes several approaches to combating the Christian claims of the messiahship of Jesus. He applies messianic personage prophecies to historical persons such as King David or Hezekiah, or to an event, or places it as a future promise for Israel's redemption, perhaps by the Messiah who is to come. Rashi interprets Micah 5:2, for example, as messianic, recognizing that the one to come forth is the son of David, the Messiah, in accordance with Psalm 118, the stone which the builders rejected. He connects the origins of the Messiah from ancient times because, quote, before the Son was, his name was Yinon. This is based on Psalm 72. He does see the Messiah in Isaiah 49:10, Isaiah 11, and Isaiah 53 in his Talmud commentary. However, in his biblical commentary, he sees Isaiah 53 as Israel collectively. It is well known that in his comments on Isaiah 53, Rashi identifies the suffering servant with Israel rather than with the Messiah. Now, we should note that Rashi lived through the First Crusade in the year 1095. Although the city where he lived was not in the direct path of the crusade, many Jews were slaughtered in the nearby city of Mainz, where Rashi had lived previously and where he undoubtedly had colleagues and acquaintances. He sees the suffering servant in light of the Jewish sufferings in his own times. Isaiah says, "And he made his grave with the wicked and with the rich in his death. Although he had done no violence, neither was any deceit in his mouth." Rashi applied this practically to the innocent Jews who chose martyrdom and consented to death silently rather than convert and deny Judaism. In my view, current events likely affected to some degree Rashi's interpretation of Isaiah 53 here. And that, by the way, is a necessary caution for all of us as we seek to understand the Bible. It was due primarily to Rashi that Isaiah 53 first became understood as collective Israel, and this is because of Christian polemics, the Crusades, and Jewish suffering of the time. Before Rashi, there was a Jewish belief that Israel suffered for their own sins and that Israel was responsible for the salvation of the world. But Rashi brought these two together. Israel was suffering for the sins of the world in order to effectuate universal salvation. He consolidated this in his Torah commentary when he referred to Isaiah 53. How does Rashi handle Genesis 1:26? Let us make man in our image. Let's take a look at Genesis Rabbah, a midrash we looked at before in the Holtz book, Back to the Sources. I'll read the midrash and then speak about Rashi's commentary to it. The midrash says, Rabbi Shimon said, when the Holy One, blessed be He, came to create the first man, the ministering angels divided into 4 groups and parties, some saying, let him not be created, and others saying, let him be created. Mercy said, let him be created, for he will be merciful. And truth said, let him not be created, for he will be all lies. Righteousness said, let him be created, for he will do righteous deeds. Peace said, let him not be created, for he is full of strife. What did the Holy One, blessed be He, do? He took truth and flung him to the earth. The ministering angels said to the Holy One, blessed be He, Master of the universe, do you disgrace your own seal? Raise truth from the earth. Rav Huna said, while the ministering angels were still arguing and disputing, the Holy One, blessed be He, created man. Then He said to them, why do you argue? Man is already made. In his comments, Rashi refers to minim, which means generally sectarians, and here refers specifically to those who view God as triune. Rashi says, quote, although the angels did not assist God in forming the man, and although this may give the minim an occasion to overrule, yet the verse does not refrain from teaching proper conduct in the virtue of humbleness, namely, that the greater should consult and take permission from the smaller. For had it been written, I shall make man, we could not then have learned that he spoke to his judicial council, but to himself. And as a refutation of the minim, it is written immediately after this verse, and God created the man. And it is not written, and they created. End quote. Hence, Rashi closes the door on the possibility of viewing God in uniplural or triune terms. Despite the polemics and apologetics in light of Christian teachings, what is not often discussed is Rashi's influence on later Christian exegetes. The great Christian translator Nicholas de Lyra, who lived from 1270 to 1340, a Franciscan professor of religion at the University of Paris, regarded as the most able Christian exegete of the time, relied upon Rashi, and in his commentary on the whole Bible, he cited him almost on every page. De Lyra said, quote, in like manner, I intend, for making clear the literal sense, to introduce not only statements of the Catholic doctors, but also of the Hebrews, especially of Rabbi Solomon, who among the Hebrew doctors has spoken most reasonably. Martin Luther relied on Rashi for his Peshat approach. Rashi's approach probably influenced the KJV in 1611. His works were appealing to Christians who at the time were searching for the plain meaning of the scriptures. Rambam. Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon. Religious sage, philosopher, community leader, and physician, the Rambam was culturally complex, a Jew steeped in ancient Greek philosophy who spent his life among Muslims and influenced Christian Europe. As Soviet scholar Vitaly Naumkin stated, quote, Maimonides is perhaps the only philosopher in the Middle Ages, perhaps even now, who symbolizes a confluence of four cultures: Greco-Roman, Arab, Jewish, and Western. Concerning his view on the Messiah, Maimonides believed in a real Messiah, a person who would fulfill the scriptural office as he saw it. His view 800 years ago still is an influence on Jewish expectation today. We can piece together a composite of the Maimonidean view of the Messiah through several of his writings, including his Epistle to Yemen, his Mishneh Torah, the 12th article of his 13 Articles of Faith. His concept of the Messiah was shaped by his rational philosophy, the persecutions of the day against Jews, Scripture, and reaction to Islam and to Christianity. According to Maimonides, the Messiah would be from Davidic descent. He recognized, as did those rabbis and sages who came before him, that although David died, there would be one successor who would come and sit on his throne, King Messiah. The Messiah would be Jewish, and in support of that, and in refutation that he was Mohammed, a non-Jew. The Messiah would be Jewish, and in support of that, and in refutation that the Messiah was Mohammed, a non-Jew, Maimonides cited Deuteronomy 18:15, that he would be raised up from among Moses' brethren. Messiah, according to Maimonides, will come in the mode of Moses, and will be greater in some respects. He will be greater than all the prophets who came before. He will prophesy, and his prophecies will come to pass. This he saw as one of the tests that would discount other so-called messiahs. Messiah is a man and not a god, according to Maimonides. He will be a superman in his knowledge of the Torah, and he will subdue the rulers of the earth who will fear him sorely. Initially, he will not know he's the Messiah, and neither will his family. After completing his task, he will die, and his posterity will continue to rule on the throne of David. Maimonides probably believed that the Messiah's redemption was for Jews only. However, he would embrace the doctrine of the Noahide laws, that is, the righteous Gentiles who abided by the Noahide laws would also enter into the world to come. When would Messiah come? In his 12th principle, Maimonides said, quote, We shall believe and affirm that he will come, and we shall not think that he will be late. If he should tarry, wait for him. Nor shall the individual set a date for his coming, nor shall he attempt to derive deductively from scriptural verses a set date for his coming. The sages said, quote, May the souls expire of those who calculate the date of the Messiah, end quote. So Maimonides says that we are not to search for the time of Messiah's coming. But it is interesting that in his epistle to Yemen, that even after expressing that, he does go on to date the arrival of the Messiah to 1216, a date that was a tradition in his family, and perhaps it was to give them hope, and yet put it beyond his own lifetime, so that they would not be hyper-focused on the coming of the Messiah. Messiah will come during a time of great catastrophe and upheaval for Israel. It will occur after the expansion of the Roman and Arab empires, and of course, according to Maimonides, after the advent of Muhammad, according to Scripture. Prophecy renewal is also a sign, as was the return of the Sanhedrin as a ruling body. In Mishneh Torah, Book of Kings, Maimonides institutes a two-tiered approach for messianic identification. Quote, And if a king shall arise from the house of David, who studies the Torah and is occupied in doing the commandments as his ancestor David, according to the written and oral Torah, and compels all Israel to walk in its ways and to strengthen its foundation, and fights the battles of God, then it is presumed that he is the Messiah. So we have a potential Messiah if 1. He traces his lineage to the house of David, 2. Studies Torah, 3. Performs good deeds in accord with written and oral Torah, 4. Reinstates widespread Torah observance, and 5. Fights battles for the Lord. According to Maimonides, Bar Kokhba was a potential Messiah, but he died before he could fulfill the second-tier requirements that would make him the certain Messiah. Here is the second tier, according to Maimonides' quote. If he succeeded in accomplishing these, the previous 5 things, and he subdued all the surrounding nations, and he built the temple in its place, and collected the dispersed of Israel, then this is the Messiah for certain. Summarizing the second-tier requirements, we have 1. He subdues Israel's enemies, 2. He rebuilds the temple at the ancient site, and 3. He regathers the dispersed of Israel. On these grounds, Maimonides discounted Jesus as Messiah. Death cannot intervene between the tiers, according to Maimonides. What would the world look like when the Messiah comes, according to Maimonides? Torah will be kept and will not be altered. There will not be any foreign domination. Messiah will teach the law out of Jerusalem. The bulk of the Christian world was antinomian, that is, believed that the law was rendered inoperative by Jesus. This, of course, would be a disqualifier. Maimonides did not see the Messianic kingdom as a whole new order, but rather a fulfillment of the ideal. The laws of nature will continue. People will be free to do Torah and thus receive their just reward in the world to come. Maimonides was a rationalist. He sought to harmonize Greek rationalism with Jewish law, and as such, he downplays apocalypticism and miracles. He was a moderate. He rejected Kabbalism, which was mystical and ascribed magical powers to the Messiah and practically deified him. He takes a practical approach when it comes to the Messiah. He refutes the Christian and the Muslim claims to the true faith, and as regarding Messiah, enjoins the community to, quote, believe in perfect faith in the coming of Messiah, and though he tarry, to wait, and not think that he will be late, end quote.